This is BBC News. I'm Anita McVeigh. The headlines at 6 o'clock.
251.
Jeremy Corbyn, an outsider when the contest began, wins a landslide victory to become Labour leader. His first act as leader was to attend a pro-refugee rally in central London this afternoon.
We as ordinary decent people stand up and say to our government, recognise your obligations in law.
We'll keep the red flag flying here.
His win has been hailed by the left wing of the party, and former leader Ed Miliband also gave him his support.
I'll be offering Jeremy Corbyn my support, and I hope people across the party do so too. I hope also, and I expect him to do this, that Jeremy reaches out to all parts of the party.
Hello, very good evening to you and welcome to BBC News. The veteran left-wing MP, Jeremy Corbyn, has swept to victory in the Labour leadership election. Mr Corbyn, who 3 months ago began the campaign as an outsider, won massive support, with nearly 60% of the vote. That was way ahead of his nearest rival, Andy Burnham, who secured just under 20%. Mr Corbyn thanked Mr Burnham and the other candidates, Liz Kendall and Yvette Cooper, saying they'd helped reinvigorate the party. And he promised to fight for a more tolerant and inclusive Britain. This report from our political correspondent, Robin Grant.
Give me the remote, let me...
And I should tell you that this report contains quite a lot of flash photography.
£40.
His white hair just visible amidst
Yeah,
the
but
scrub.
Teresa, I went
This
to go
is
and
what you
speak.
call
I went to go and say
survival
that
for
I
Jeremy
want to make packed lunch at home. Blah, 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 blah.
Why did you get him
She
for?
always speaks.
I told you when he comes, let Precious knows how to handle you.
Yeah, but Precious
The man,
didn't
some call
listen to me,
simply
so I
JC, was
You are not making any... You can't eat cold food, you will die, yo. You need hot food.
I'll only have hot
You need hot
I'm
food
not
to go
eating-
throughout the day.
Precious can have hot food.
scale of the
Precious has her
victory
own.
Big, this whole thing is difficult. Sorry, this whole thing is difficult. Why didn't you just pause here?
He obliterated the others, winning the first round by a huge margin. So, for the first time as leader
This
of
whole
the
thing
opposition,
Let's go to
Jeremy
the
Corbyn started by
Thanking everyone
Bye, Shining Light
who took
TV.
part in this election, this huge democratic exercise.
Don't go through the... Come
More
this
than
way.
500,000 people all across this country.
All across this country.
It showed our party and our movement passionate, democratic, diverse, united and absolutely determined in our quest for a decent and better society that is possible for all.
he obliterated the others, winning in the first round by a huge margin. But he was conciliatory, perhaps a sign he does want to reach out. Later, outside a Westminster pub, he spoke to the BBC.
Fantastic moment, fantastic mandate for change in Britain, fantastic enthusiasm for real democratic politics. It's a great day.
The spin doctors said no more, but then came his warning to Labour MPs who've already quit top jobs in protest at his election.
There's going to be an inclusive, open process. I hope everyone will recognise the mandate we've received and that party members expect our party to deliver for them in Parliament.
So, who is Jeremy Corbyn? A veteran MP of 32 years, he looks now as he did back then. He spent decades on the periphery of his party, associating with controversial causes, including the IRA and the Palestinian group Hamas. Now, 66 years old, he's a vegetarian who's never far from his bike. So, Saturday the 12th of September 2015, the day the Labour Party got a new leader it never ever expected to get, and the day it got a leader that the vast majority of its MPs don't support. There'll be euphoria for Team Corbyn, but once that's passed, the big challenge is now keeping Labour together. The man who used to be Labour leader was quick to offer his support, but there was a warning too.
Our party is a broad church, always has been, always will be, and the task of the leader is to reach all parts of that movement, and I believe that's what Jeremy should do.
I think obviously he, Tom and the new leadership team will now want to be reaching out across the
that we've had for the last few months, but about the country as well.
He'll savour the moment he never thought would happen, the moment some of his critics hoped they would never see. Now the challenge for Jeremy Corbyn is, can he make the group hug last? Can he keep Labour together? Robin Brandt, BBC News, Westminster.
After securing victory, Mr Corbyn celebrated with his supporters at a pro-refugee rally in central London. Here's what he said to the crowds.
Our objective ought to be to find peaceful solutions to the problems of this world. To spend our resources on helping people, not hindering people. And to try and bring about that world of decency, human rights and justice. And so, none of this is simple, none of this is easy. But surely we have a principle between us all, that we are all human beings on the same planet. We're all human beings who want to live. We're all human beings that want the children to live and the next generation to hopefully be better off than we are. And you think of those families eking out an existence in refugee camps all around the world. They too are ambitious. Their children too want to be artists, poets, writers, engineers, lawyers, journalists, medical practitioners, doctors and everything else. The waste of human resources by the lack of human rights is one of the great crimes of the last and this century. So today here in Parliament Square, we as ordinary decent people stand up and say to our government, recognise your obligations in law. That would be good. Recognise your obligations to help people, which you're required to do by law. That would be good. But above all, open your hearts and open your minds and open your attitude towards supporting people who are desperate, who need somewhere safe to live, want to contribute to our society, and are human beings just like all of us.
Jeremy Corbyn speaking in Parliament Square. Well, the Shadow Business Secretary has congratulated Jeremy Corbyn on his win, saying it was now vital for the party to work towards ensuring Labour gets back into office. However, Chuka Umunna refused to say whether he would continue to serve in a new shadow cabinet.
Well, it's an extraordinary result, and congratulations to Jeremy, our new leader, and obviously I'm disappointed that my candidate Liz didn't do better. Huge gratitude to Andy and Devet contributing to the result, to the lively debate that we've had as well. But the important thing now is that we mount the strongest, most credible and effective opposition to the Tories that we can, and also work towards ensuring that we get Labour back into office, because that, importantly, is why Keir Hardie and the founders of our movement set up the Labour Party in the first place. And I think ultimately getting elected and being true to your values are mutually dependent. You can't do one without the other, and that's what we're all going to be working towards.
So does that mean you'll stand in the shadow cabinet?
Chuka Umunna there. Well, let's talk now to our chief political correspondent, Vicky Young, who's at Labour headquarters in central London. And Vicky, it's been an extraordinary day in politics, hasn't it? So as Jeremy Corbyn starts to absorb his victory, what's next for him?
Yes, and I think it's the scale of that victory, isn't it? I mean, if we said 3 months ago that Jeremy Corbyn would be Labour leader, people would have thought we were absolutely crazy. But if you said that he would win with almost 60% of the vote, people would have found that even more surprising. And I think the scale of that victory means that those in the Labour Party, in the Parliamentary Labour Party, who consider themselves moderates, they know that he has now got a huge mandate from the party membership, and any idea of an early coup to try and get rid of him, I think, has gone completely. What they are now trying to do is decide what to do. Do they stay and fight? Do they decide to sit in the shadow cabinet and maybe try and change some of Jeremy Corbyn's policies, or do they go to the backbenches? And we have had now 6, 7, 8 of those in the shadow cabinet saying that they have decided that they will go to the backbenches. For Jeremy Corbyn, though, he's talked a lot about unity, about the party being a big tent, that he wants to appeal to a wide range of people. So how exactly is he going to do that? To the extent of what staff will he bring in here at Labour HQ? Who will he put in his shadow cabinet? And is he willing to compromise on any of his policies? On Trident, for example, where very many people in the Parliamentary Labour Party would not agree with him that Trident shouldn't be renewed. So they're the challenges for him. He's talking already about changing things, about approaching things differently. Prime Minister's Questions, for example, he says it's not all about him, it won't be him every week, that he'll get other people to do Prime Minister's Questions for him. So certainly things have changed.
And of course, during the campaign, people said that they liked Jeremy Corbyn because they thought he was different to other politicians. Is he going to be able to maintain that difference now that he is Labour leader?
Well, that is a big question, isn't it? What he has managed to do is these people who have signed up to the Labour Party paying their £3, but the membership as well. He has managed to tap into something. His team say it's young people, for example, who are fed up with what they've seen with the old politics, if you like, that they want to do something completely different. They want someone who looks different, who sounds different, and his authenticity, they say, is what has appealed to people. The question is, will that translate across the board, the wider British electorate? Can he galvanise people who voted Green last time? Maybe so. Can he win across SNP voters? Can he appeal to young people? But the problem is, there are many in his party who just think that won't be enough. They have to appeal to people who voted Conservative just a few months ago, who voted in a majority Conservative government. And what some in the party fear is that Jeremy Corbyn and 250,000 Labour supporters who've just voted for him, that they are actually out of step with the wider British electorate. But it may well be, after more years of austerity and the rest of it, that he will manage to win across some more people.
OK, Vicky, thank you very much. Vicky Young there at Labour headquarters. John McTernan is a former advisor to Tony Blair, and speaking to my colleague Jane Hill at Westminster earlier, he said Jeremy Corbyn has a big task ahead of him to convince the electorate.
The difficulty for Jeremy Corbyn, well, the difficulties start now. He's got to get himself a team, he's got to work out how to act in Parliament, how to handle Prime Minister's questions, and finally he's got to deal with the electorate. And the big issue is the Labour Party may have changed, but the electorate haven't. They didn't vote Labour because they don't trust Labour on running the economy, don't trust Labour on immigration, don't trust Labour on welfare, and Jeremy Corbyn's going to have to deal with that. All the pollsters he'll employ for the Labour Party will tell him that. So either he's got to change or the voters have to change.
Well, he might persuade voters that he has credible economic policies. He might come here on Monday and lay forward his plans. And why is there an assumption that won't work, that it just won't fly?
Because when the public voted for a right-wing government, a majority Tory government, they weren't saying what we'd really, really like as a left-wing Labour government. That's the central proposition of the Corbyn campaign, that people only voted for UKIP and Tories, right-wing parties, because the Labour Party weren't left-wing enough. And on economic management, people have got a very clear idea of what sensible economic management is. It's doing something about the debt, doing something about the deficit, and it's not the Corbynomics proposal of just printing money, getting the Bank of England to print more money and using that to fund public services. The public don't understand the technicalities, but they certainly know that's not good economic management, and that's the worry. There's some central Corbyn policies that will not run with the public, and the Tories will be quick to making that the central part of their attack.
So why did so many people vote for him straight through in the first round? A huge response. He's tapped into something, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's tapped in to a lot of people who were going to vote Labour anyway. And the point is, Labour is under 30% in the polls, and what he's mobilised is people who want a more left-leaning and a greener Labour Party. He's not tapped into anything in the public, and this is the difficulty. We have to win elections not inside the Labour Party, we've got to win them in the country at large, and the electors know what they want and they know what they like, and they've got a Tory government and the Labour Party. I don't know a single person who voted for Jeremy Corbyn who believes Jeremy Corbyn can win the election in 2020. So basically the Labour Party has abdicated any responsibility for trying to reverse anything the Tories do for at least the next 10 years. And I think the voters won't like that. I certainly don't like it. And I think it is going to be a very, very hard time for the most disadvantaged people in the country, the ones who need a Labour government to defend them.
So what should happen now, do you think? What is going to happen, given that he does come in with a mandate?
Well, it's very clear that Jeremy Corbyn's got a set of ideas. He should be allowed to run the Labour Party. He's the leader, he's got an overwhelming majority. He's going to have control of £7 million a year of short money. He can employ the staff he wants, he can appoint the shadow cabinet he wants, the front bench he wants. In the end, the proof will be what the voters do. And I don't believe that the package that he's proposing to the public is sellable at any speed. And so we'll see next May in London in the mayoralty, we'll see next May in Wales, we'll see next year in the council elections the public's first verdict. And the only hope for the Labour Party to be successful in the next period is Alan Johnson's leadership of the EU campaign, where Labour are on the side of the public, are on the side of business, are in the right place, and could save some popularity, and there may be some rebuilding for the future possible there.
John McTernan. The government's also been responding to Jeremy Corbyn's victory. The Defence Secretary, Michael Fallon, has been talking to our political correspondent, Robin Brandt.
This is a very serious moment for our country. This election shows that Labour is now a serious risk to our national security, to our economic security, and to the security of your family.
So, let's get this straight. Your reaction to this overwhelming victory by Jeremy Corbyn is to rerun that election strategy of basically trying to scare British people about it?
No, this election shows that Labour now poses a very serious risk to our security, our national security, because they would undermine our defences, to our economic security, because there'll be taxes on jobs, taxes on earnings, and more borrowing, and to the security of every family. That would affect all working people.
And just finally, in your role as Defence Secretary, do you now think that Labour really are serious under Jeremy Corbyn about Trident, about changing what goes on at Faslane?
Well, this government is serious about keeping Britain safe. But this election shows that Labour are now putting that at risk. They're a risk to our national security, they would undermine our defences, but more than that, they're a risk to our economic security. They would pile taxes on jobs and earnings, and that will affect all working people.
Defence Secretary Michael Fallon. Well, our correspondent Philip Norton is in Wigan. He's been gauging reaction there to Jeremy Corbyn's win.
Well, yes, the Diggers Festival here is now well underway today. It celebrates the life of Gerard Winstanley, who was born here, and also celebrates the socialist movement as well. And it's fair to say there's many unions, Labour members, Labour voters here. Many have got a huge smile on their face today. There's certainly a bit of a spring in many people's steps as well. And you may have heard Jeremy Corbyn thanking the Bakers Union for their support, among other unions. Well, the Vice President of the Bakers Union joins me today. It's John Fox. John, how are you feeling today?
Well, I'm feeling great. I think it's a great result what Jeremy's done for the Labour movement. I do think the result of him winning will be based on the equality what we will bring in for the party, yeah, and help everybody else in the country.
There's already been calls for unity, but yet many members of the front bench of the Labour Party have already resigned. Does this worry you at all?
No, that doesn't worry me at all. I think in the Labour Party itself, they've got a lot of good politicians what can take their places, like Richard Bergen from Leeds and our own Lisa Nandy from Wigan. Yeah, which is excellent MPs. There's another one, Louise Hay in Sheffield. And I think those now are the prominent MPs that will come through and start reforming the Labour Party.
John, thank you very much for your time. We're also here as well as Jeff Dawson, is a local poet, author, and you're a musician. You've been hosting the stage here as well, man of many talents. Just tell us then, why is Jeremy Corbyn such a favourite around here?
I think it's because he's a man who you can talk to. He means something to the people, reminds me of Tony Benn. Somebody who could actually, you think, well, I could speak to that man if I needed to. You know, there's a massive divide between people who haven't and people who have, and this man is there to sort of like bring the gap together, I think.
What are you hoping he'll bring to the Labour Party?
I think just a common sense of understanding to people with needs, decency, integrity, and just a bit of heart, really. A bit of heart to say, let's listen to the people. This is our country, everybody's included, and this is a man, I think, to bring it together.
Is he a serious contender for Prime Minister?
I certainly think so, yeah, because most people you speak to, they haven't voted for years. They say the same old thing. I don't bother voting because they're all the same. No matter which party it is, they're all the same. I do a lot of gigs, I do a lot of stuff at Bolton Socialist Club, Wigan, and everyone says the same thing. Well, the disillusions, they go with Left Unity, they don't go with the main Labour Party. They've had enough of it, basically. And all them people are coming back because they see somebody. But finally, they can say, that man has got the Labour principles that we grew up with, that we believe in.
Jeff, thank you very much, and John, thank you as well. Enjoy the rest of your evening here tonight, and I'm assured the celebrations will go on well into the night.
Philip Norton there at the Diggers Festival in Wigan. So, who is Jeremy Corbyn and what are his main policies? Christian Fraser has more at the screen for us.
So here he is then, the new leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, at the age of 66, member for Islington North since 1983, no front bench experience, always the rebel until this point. I'm pledging to take Labour in a totally different direction. There'll be none of the austerity light of the other three candidates. He is vehemently anti-austerity. How did he do it? Well, he stirred the passions and the emotions of the Labour grassroots. It was a new kind of politics, said his supporters. Len McCluskey, the General Secretary of Unite, said he lit a light in the movement which he couldn't envisage some 4 weeks ago. But there are those within the party who are worried. Remember, he only got 10% of the support of the Parliamentary Labour Party. John Cruddas, the former policy coordinator under Ed Miliband, says he fears Jeremy Corbyn might be an early 80s tribute act. And remember this from Tony Blair: if your heart is in the politics of Jeremy Corbyn, he says, then you need to get yourself a heart transplant. So he needs to reunite the party, but can he do it around the policies in his manifesto? Let's take a look. As I said, vehemently anti-austerity, so there'd be higher taxes for the rich, protection for those on welfare. The Bank of England would be allowed to print money. He calls it people's quantitative easing, much more cash for things like railways, housing and digital. His policies on defence might worry some on the government benches. Of course, as the chair of the Stop the War campaign, he'd get rid of Trident. He may well pull Britain out of NATO if he was leader. And he's opposed to the airstrikes in Syria and Iraq. In terms of the railways, he'd renationalise those along with the energy companies. He's very much in favour of free education. His children, he wanted to go to comprehensive schools, so he'd scrap tuition fees for graduates, replacing them with grants. And in terms of Europe, with the referendum coming up, sits on the fence a little bit. All he would say is he wants a better Europe, whatever that may be. So, Jeremy Corbyn then, a very different Labour Party under him. Maybe interesting to see who he puts in his shadow cabinet. Maybe those that were in that cabinet in May may well be the rebels.
Christian Fraser, the time is now 6:22. Let's take a look at some of the day's other main news. And at least 82 people have been killed in a gas explosion at a crowded restaurant in the state of Madhya Pradesh in India. Police say a cooking gas cylinder blew up and triggered a second blast of mine detonators stored illegally next to the restaurant. Around 100 people have been injured in the blast, which caused the building's roof to cave in. Our correspondent Sanjoy Majumdar has more.
Well, it took place in the morning in this town in central India in Madhya Pradesh state. Very crowded at the time because the restaurant itself was packed with people, office goers and a lot of school children having breakfast. It was also in a fairly crowded location. I understand there was a bus station nearby as well, and that's the reason there were so many people at the time. As you say, the police say a gas cylinder used for cooking first exploded and then apparently set on fire. Several explosives that were stored nearby. We're not quite sure whether they were stored in the restaurant or in an adjoining building. And those set off more explosions leading to a massive fire. It's a two-story building which collapsed because of the intensity of the blast. Rescue workers who initially got there had to actually use their bare hands to sift through the rubble to try and get to those trapped underneath.
Sanjoy Majumdar. 2 British women have been killed after a train derailed in northern India. The governor of the tourists were travelling on a specially chartered train carrying a group of 37 Britons to the Indian Himalayan town of Shimla. The York-based Great Rail Journeys, who organised the tour, said a number of people in the group had been hospitalised. The governor of the Saudi region of Mecca has ordered a full investigation into why a crane collapsed on top of the city's Grand Mosque. More than 100 people are now known to have been killed in the incident, which happened during a violent storm. Building work around the mosque, Islam's holiest site, had been continuing ahead of the annual Hajj pilgrimage. Sangeeta Maiska has more.
Mecca in the grip of a sandstorm. A worshipper films from inside the Grand Mosque when outside disaster strikes. giant crane collapses into the mosque wall. Panic and fear takes hold of the faithful. Hundreds run for their lives. It's still unclear how many were killed as a result of the collapse and how many from the panic that followed.
My mother was inside the mosque and she just heard a loud crashing noise. The weather just, it went dark, and first it was like imagine like a little mini tornado going through the mosque area in the middle, because the middle part where the Kaaba is, it's all open area. Only thing you can see was like lining the place up, and the rain was just horrendous coming from all directions, and it was just windy.
The scale of the disaster that has befallen the world's biggest mosque complex has been laid bare. The death toll today continues to rise, yet more people are pouring into the city. 2 million worshippers are due for the annual pilgrimage of Hajj. Cranes have surrounded the mosque complex for 2 years as authorities attempt to create accommodation for those arriving.
There has to be some strategy of health and safety, and we clearly don't have that. We have lost hundreds and not thousands of lives over the lapse of 20 plus years.
Repairs to the Grand Mosque complex are already underway, and despite the shadow cast by Friday's events, worshippers have been told the pilgrimage will go on as usual. Sangeeta Maiska, BBC News.
Officials in Germany say they're expecting up to 40,000 migrants to enter the country over the next 2 days. That's double the number that arrived last weekend. Thousands of extra troops have been deployed to some centres amid concerns that they won't be able to cope with another large influx. Munich, one of the most attractive destinations, received another 3,600 migrants this morning. The city's mayor has appealed to other German regions to do more to help ease the pressure. The Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has been visiting the flood-hit city of Joso, where raging torrents swept away houses and left at least 4 people dead. More than a dozen residents are still missing, and the emergency services are struggling to pump the floodwaters away. John McManus reports.
Touching down in the middle of Joso, a city of 65,000 people, parts of which have now been washed away after a levee on the Kinugawa River gave way on Thursday. Shinzo Abe came to see the rescue effort being carried out in the wake of torrential rains brought by Typhoon Itao. Residents had to scramble onto their rooftops to escape the river waters which flooded through a burst levee. Now many of them are bedding down in temporary shelters. Around 4,500 people are currently living in schools and other public buildings, while engineers try to restore power and water supplies. Mr. Abe told reporters that the government was working as fast as possible in challenging circumstances.
I visited the devastated areas today and saw with my own eyes the horrors of the flooded river area, and it brought home to me the scale of the devastation and damage.
Aside from a dry and warm place to sleep, the city has also taken other practical steps to help residents. At the City Hall, a free charging service for mobile phones is helping families to keep in touch with each other. Outside, up to 2,000 troops, police and firefighters are searching waterlogged buildings for survivors, while others are attempting to reconstruct the burst riverbank where the water first came through. Others have set about doing what they can themselves. The waters are now retreating, helped by a pumping effort, but it could be several days before some residents can return to their homes and begin their own clean-up. John McManus, BBC News.
Well, it's time now for a look at our weather forecast. Here's Nick Miller.
Hello, last weekend high pressure was settling our weather down, but now low pressure is back and the first area of rain from it so far this weekend. Tonight will clear northern Scotland. We'll see some gales developing in northwest Scotland, some showers affecting westernmost parts of the UK. Actually a lot of dry, fairly clear weather elsewhere. Temperatures for town and city centres down to around 10 Celsius or so. We'll start the day tomorrow with quite a lot of dry, sunny weather. There's still some showers around in the west. The winds in the afternoon will slowly ease a bit in northwest Scotland, but strengthen in southwest England as some wet weather moves in. Gales developing in places here. Another area of rain clipping the far southeast of England, moving on towards East Anglia and parts of the East Midlands. Where you're staying dry, though, with variable cloud and sunshine. Temperatures reach into the high teens. But Monday, low pressure coming in from the southwest. England and Wales seeing plenty of showers. And Northern Ireland and Scotland seeing fewer showers. The driest weather on Monday. And as ever, you can find a forecast for where you are or where you go online.
How about introducing a panel?
The brand new quiz show, 6 Brilliant Minds.
The great use of a professor of theoretical physics.
Must find 6 degrees of separation between analogue and digital.
I'm going to put you out of our misery.
6 degrees of separation, part of the BBC's Make It Digital season, Monday at 10 on BBC Two.
Hello, good evening. This is BBC News with me, Anita McVeigh. The headlines at 6:30 exactly. Jeremy Corbyn celebrates with his supporters after being elected as the new leader of the Labour Party. The veteran left-winger secured almost 60% of the vote in a landslide victory. Mr Corbyn promises to revive his party's fortunes after defeat at the general election, but some members of the shadow cabinet have already resigned. Tom Watson is elected as the party's deputy leader. He promised to back Mr Corbyn 100% and is seen as a key figure in maintaining party discipline. In other news, at least 2 British tourists have been killed after a train travelling to the Indian town of Shimla derailed. The train had been chartered privately and was carrying more than 30 British tourists. Officials in Saudi Arabia order an investigation after a crane collapses in the Muslim holy city of Mecca. 107 people were killed and more than 200 injured. It's time now to cross to the BBC Sports Centre for Sports Day.
Hello there, welcome to Sports Day with me, Ollie Foster, and Matt Smith.
Hello, these are our headlines tonight. The champs are chumps again. Defeat to Everton leaves Mourinho ruining the worst run of results in his career.
6 of the best, the Dons down Celtic to go top of the Scottish Premiership.
No double delight in New York for Jamie Murray. He's beaten with his partner in the US Open final.
Also coming up in the programme, tearing up the time. Peacock is one of the British winners at the Great City Games.
And Doncaster drama. Bondi Beach is beaten but then given victory by the stewards in the St Ledger.
Evening to you. Chelsea's miserable start to the season continued with a 3-1 defeat at Everton today, having lost just 3 games in winning the Premier League.